Hi, this is Eric Martin with Board Game Geek News. I'm here with Rob Doherty from White Wizard Games. Yep. Okay, this time, I talked with Rob before. You were demoing Ascension: Rise of Vigil.
Yes.
So now we got something else here. So your own project.
Yeah, I do. I've got a lot of hats. So I'm the organized play director for Stoneblade Entertainment and do Ascension and Soulforge. So those are awesome games. You should check them out if you haven't already. And this is a side project I'm doing with a friend of mine, Magic Hall of Famer Darwin Castle. And this is the Star Realms deck building game. This game is a combination of a deck building game, so you get the low price point, and in fact this one has a lower price point than deck building games normally do. This entire game comes in a box for $14.95, but it plays like a TCG. You and your opponent start with a score, and the goal of the game is to reduce your opponent's score to 0. If you reduce your opponent's score to 0, they're defeated. So in a two-player game, if you knock out your opponent's score, you win.
All right, so we have our score pile in front of us here. We got 50.
Yeah, so you start the game with 50 authority. Authority represents your command over your region of space, your Star Empire. And we have cards that represent authority. You can use a pencil or paper if you prefer, but we've got these nice double-sided cards that allow you to track your authority. So you start the game with a 20, 2 10s, a 5, and 5 1s to represent your 50 authority. When you take damage, you simply take the cards and set them aside, and they're double-sided, so if you need to change your numbers around, you can do it pretty easily.
Okay. All right, and so what do we have to start with, and then how does the gameplay work?
Each player starts with a 10-card personal deck that comes with 2 Vipers, which give you combat, and 8 Scouts that give you trade. Do you want to?
Okay. This is the solo performance here, so
this is the Viper, which provides combat. You can see the red symbol there. And this is a Scout that provides trade. Combat is used to attack your opponent or their bases directly. When you attack your opponent, you'll reduce their authority by the same amount. So if I attack my opponent for 1 with a Viper, their authority would go from 50 to 49. Trade is used to buy cards in the game. The cards that you can buy, like this Explorer, have a cost in the upper right-hand corner. That's how much trade it is required to buy the card. When I buy a card, it goes directly to my discard pile with no effect. In addition to this pile of 10 Explorers, from a central deck, the trade deck, there are 5 cards laid out. This is the trade roll, and as you can see, this is a prototype, so some of our cards have art and some do not. And there are 2 types of cards in the game. There are ships, which are printed like this, and then there are also bases, and these all come from the trade deck. And bases have the horizontal art, so they're easy to recognize. Ships, when you play them from your hand, they do what they say on them, and then they stay face out on the table until the end of your turn, and then they'll go to your discard pile. The bases stay in play until they're destroyed. And the bases all have a defense value on them. That's how much combat needs to be done to them in a single turn to destroy them. So at the end of your turn, your bases heal. So if someone did 3 damage to this base in a turn, it would have no effect. It would heal back up to 8 at the end of the turn. So you have to do all the damage at once. Now, if my opponent has this base, I can choose to attack this base, or I can attack them. I get to decide which I go after. There are some types of bases called outposts, which defend a player. An outpost has a little tag above the shield with the word outpost on it. If you have an outpost in play, you cannot be attacked, and your non-outpost bases cannot be attacked or targeted until the outpost is destroyed. When a base, be it an outpost or regular base, is destroyed, it goes to your discard pile, and then if you draw it later in the game, you can play it again.
Okay. Now, looking at the cards, there's a lot more than just one line here. We have a line on the top of the card. I guess that's what you get immediately.
So the map of a card. In the upper left-hand corner is the faction symbol. There are 4 factions in the game, and you don't need to worry about the faction, but factions will be referenced as you play. And then there's the card name and type, and then the cost in the upper right. The first line is what the card does when you play it from your hand. So, for example, this ship gives you 5 combat. Now, there are 2 abilities that you'll see on cards. There are ally abilities, and the ally ability will have the same symbol as the symbol in the upper left-hand corner of a card. An ally ability triggers if you have a second card of that type in play. So, for example, if I played this card from my hand, and I also played this card from my hand, I'd now have an additional card of this faction in play. So my ally abilities would trigger. Then I can use those abilities at any point during my main phase. So I could, for example, use this one to draw a card, and this one would get an additional 2 combat. Now that ability is in addition to the regular ability. So this one, if the ally ability triggers, would give 3 combat and draw you a card, and this one would give you 5 combat plus 2 combat, so a total of 7. The other type of ability that you'll see on cards is this little trash can symbol. That's the scrap icon. You can, when this card is in play, you can choose to take it off the board and remove it from the game. If you do so, you get that additional ability, and that's in addition to everything else the card did. So this one, for example, if the ally ability triggered, would give me the 5 combat plus the 2 combat, and then if I chose to get rid of it, it would give me the 3 trade. But that gets rid of the card from your deck forever, so you have to decide whether it's worth it to you to lose the card forever in order to get that one-time boost.
Now, so you've got outposts that protect people. I guess, is that the only thing that keeps you from going to the face immediately? Or
Outposts are your line of defense. If you have regular bases, your opponent will often want to attack them because they frequently give you powerful abilities. But
right, this one, all your ships get an increased attack value. What are other bases that come out?
Sure, we can get some examples of bases here. So we've got. We've got the central office, which gives you 2 trade every turn, and you have the ability to put a ship that you buy directly on top of your deck, so it'll be the next thing you draw. And conveniently, its ally ability is to draw a card, so you can buy a card, put it on top of your deck, and then if you can trigger your ally ability, you can then draw that card and play it in the same turn. So that can be quite powerful. That's just that is a regular base. We've got the Blob World that gives 5 combat every turn. Or you may draw a card for each blob ship that you've played that turn, and the turn you play this counts as a card you've played. So often that can draw you multiple cards in a turn, so it can be quite powerful. Grab another quick example. So this base is only costs 3. But it doesn't have any normal ability. It just sits there on the board. But it's an outpost, so it defends you, and it's got a defensive 5. It has the ability to be scrapped for 5 combat. So if you need it, you can get rid of it and get an extra combat boost, or you can use it as defense.
All right. So what's the nature of a turn? We start with a basic deck. As you say.
So players start with a 10-card deck. The player who's going first gets a 3-card hand on their first turn of the game. The player going second gets a 5-card hand. In the course of your turn, you have your main phase when you can play cards from your hand. You can buy cards from the center row or from the explorer pile. And when you buy cards, they go to your discard pile. You can attack your opponent or their bases, and you can do these things in any order you like. So you could play 2 cards from your hand, buy something from the board. As soon as a card goes away from the trade row, it's immediately replaced by the next card from the trade deck. So there's always 5 things out there. And then you could choose to attack your opponent or one of their bases. Then you can play more cards from your hand. So you can mix up the order in any way you like. Then after you're done with your main phase, you go to your discard phase, and then in your discard phase, all the ships that you've played face up in front of you go to your discard pile. Any cards left in your hand go to your discard pile, and you then lose all the trade you have available and all the combat you have available go away, and then
leaving only the bases and outposts behind.
So at that point, you'll only have bases, any bases and outposts in play, and then you go to your draw and you draw 5 cards. So you draw 5 cards at the end of every one of your turns.
Okay. Now you're describing a 2-player game, but this is actually you mentioned to me beforehand that you can combine them. You can do it.
Each 1495 deck provides enough cards to do for 2 players. You can do multiplayer games, and there's a bunch of different multiplayer formats. Basically, any multiplayer format that can be done in a trading card game works well in Star Realms. So you can have 2-player teams. You can have multiple players going against one player with enhanced powers. There's a whole bunch of different options. You can have 3-player teams, and all the multiplayer rules come in the basic game. But you'd need to buy multiple copies to be able to support those the multiplayer variants.
What's the release date? What are you looking at for?
This game's going to be coming out for Christmas, so end of November, beginning of December.
All right. Thanks very much for the overview. I'm not shaking hands this convention. There we go. Thank you.